Imagine standing at the edge of history, where the soil beneath your feet holds secrets older than our written records. The ground you walk on remembers a time when the world was vastly different, perhaps more advanced than we've been told. Picture this: civilizations flourishing across the globe, sharing sophisticated knowledge of the stars, mathematics, and engineering. Then suddenly, silence. A global catastrophe wipes the slate clean, forcing humanity to begin again, nearly from scratch. You've been taught that human civilization began around 6,000 years ago with Mesopotamia and Egypt. The story of our ascent from primitive hunters to builders of cities is neat, orderly, and familiar. But what if that timeline is dramatically wrong? What if advanced societies existed thousands of years earlier? What if humanity has risen and fallen multiple times, with each collapse erasing the memory of what came before? Strange anomalies appear in the archaeological record: megalithic structures of impossible precision, ancient maps showing lands not yet discovered, and curious artifacts that seem out of place and time. These inconvenient findings often get dismissed, explained away, or simply ignored. Across every continent, indigenous legends speak of a great flood that devastated the world. From the Bible's Noah to the Mesopotamian Gilgamesh, from Native American oral histories to Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, the theme persists: water, destruction, few survivors. More curious still is how these separate cultures describe similar events with remarkable consistency. Could over 600 global flood myths stem from a shared traumatic experience rather than coincidence or cultural exchange? Tonight, we step into the shadowy gap between established history and forbidden possibilities. We'll examine evidence suggesting that approximately 12,000 years ago, Earth experienced a cataclysmic reset, a global catastrophe that wiped away an advanced civilization. The clues lie in ancient texts, underwater ruins, geological anomalies, and astronomical alignments. They've been hiding in plain sight, scattered like puzzle pieces across disciplines that rarely communicate with each other. What you're about to discover might seem impossible at first, too vast, too paradigm-shifting to accept. Yet the evidence, when assembled carefully, tells a story more compelling than fiction and more disturbing than myth. Perhaps most unsettling is why this knowledge remains obscured. Is it merely academic caution or something deeper? What would it mean for our understanding of human potential if we've achieved greatness before, only to lose it all? The timeline of human civilization may be less like a straight arrow of progress and more like a cycle: rise, fall, and rise again, with each reset leaving only cryptic clues for future generations to decipher. Consider the implications. If an advanced civilization existed before our recorded history, their technology, their social structures, their understanding of the cosmos, all of it was lost. We may be rediscovering knowledge rather than discovering it for the first time. And if true, we face uncomfortable questions about our own future. Are we vulnerable to the same forces that erased our predecessors? Could we too be reset, leaving only perplexing monuments for a future civilization to puzzle over? You'll hear evidence from geology, archaeology, mythology, and astronomy. You'll encounter theories that mainstream academia hesitates to embrace, but cannot entirely dismiss. Most importantly, you'll be invited to consider a different story of human history. This is not merely about rewriting textbooks. It's about understanding who we are, where we came from, and perhaps where we're headed. Because cycles, once recognized, can potentially be broken. The journey begins with a simple question: why do ancient megalithic structures around the world share such striking similarities despite being built by cultures supposedly isolated from one another? From the pyramids of Egypt to those in Mexico, from Göbekli Tepe in Turkey to the enormous stones of Baalbek in Lebanon, these sites exhibit knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering principles that, according to conventional history, their builders should not have possessed. Tonight, we explore what happened approximately 12,000 years ago, that might have erased an advanced global civilization from history, leaving only tantalizing fragments for us to find. Chapter 2. The Shattered Timeline. What if everything we know about human civilization is built upon a foundation of incomplete information? The stakes of this inquiry extend far beyond academic debate. They strike at the heart of our identity as a species. If conclusive evidence emerged proving that an advanced global civilization existed and was destroyed 12,000 years ago, our entire understanding of human potential and history would require complete reconstruction. Consider the implications for science. Our current technological development is viewed as unprecedented, humanity's first ascent to mastery over nature. But what if we're merely rediscovering knowledge that was once widely understood and then catastrophically lost? The technological acceleration we've witnessed since the Industrial Revolution might not represent humanity's first technological flowering, but rather a re-emergence, like a plant growing again after being cut to the ground. This possibility transforms how we view ourselves. Rather than being at the pinnacle of human achievement, we might be recovering from a profound amnesia, slowly reclaiming the heights our ancestors had already reached. The archaeological establishment has invested careers and reputations in the current timeline of human development. Textbooks, museum exhibits, and academic departments are structured around the premise that civilization began approximately 6,000 years ago. To acknowledge evidence of advanced societies existing thousands of years earlier would require admitting that generations of experts have overlooked or misinterpreted critical information. The resistance to such a paradigm shift is understandably fierce. And yet, the questions persist. How did ancient builders move and place stone blocks weighing hundreds of tons with such precision that a credit card cannot fit between them? Why do ancient sites demonstrate advanced astronomical knowledge? Why do megalithic structures across continents share mathematical proportions and construction techniques despite supposedly having no contact? And perhaps most importantly, why do so many ancient cultures share stories of a world-destroying flood? The implications extend beyond archaeology. If an advanced civilization was indeed wiped out by a global catastrophe, we must confront the possibility that our own civilization is vulnerable to similar threats. Climate change, asteroid impacts, solar flares, supervolcanoes. The very forces that might have ended our predecessors remain active today. Understanding what happened 12,000 years ago could be crucial for our survival. There's also the matter of cultural inheritance. If humanity has risen and fallen before, certain myths, symbols, and traditions may not be primitive superstitions, but degraded memories of actual events and sophisticated knowledge. The story of Atlantis, long dismissed as Plato's philosophical fiction, takes on new significance when viewed alongside geological evidence of rapidly rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age, precisely when many ancient texts place their flood narratives. Religious accounts of a golden age followed by a fall from grace may preserve cultural memories of this lost world. What we categorize as mythology might contain more historical truth than we've been willing to acknowledge. Moreover, this inquiry forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about historical narratives. If evidence of advanced ancient civilizations has been systematically misinterpreted or marginalized, what does this tell us about how knowledge is constructed and controlled? Why are alternative interpretations of archaeological evidence often dismissed without thorough investigation? What institutional or psychological barriers prevent serious consideration of paradigm-challenging discoveries? For individuals, reconsidering human history at this scale can be profoundly disorienting. If we've been wrong about something so fundamental, what else might we be mistaken about? The implications ripple through our understanding of progress, purpose, and possibility. Yet this inquiry also offers hope. If humans achieved advanced civilization before, it demonstrates our species' remarkable resilience and creative capacity. We've fallen before, and we've risen again, perhaps wiser for the experience. Understanding our true history might reveal cyclical patterns that could help us avoid the fate of our predecessors. By learning what destroyed them, we might protect ourselves from similar catastrophes. The stakes of this investigation transcend academic curiosity. They touch on the very essence of who we are and what we might become. If we are indeed the survivors of a shattered civilization, our responsibility to preserve and advance knowledge takes on new urgency. As we proceed through the evidence, keep this perspective in mind. We are not merely examining curious anomalies in the archaeological record. We are potentially recovering our own forgotten story, piecing together a lost chapter of human experience. Perhaps most profound is the possibility that the amnesia was not complete. Perhaps knowledge was deliberately preserved, encoded in stone and story, waiting for the day when humanity would once again be ready to receive it. Chapter 3. Before the deluge. To understand what might have been lost, we must first establish the conventional timeline of human development and then examine where it might be incomplete. According to mainstream archaeology, humans evolved to their anatomically modern form approximately 200,000 years ago. For most of that time, we lived as hunter-gatherers, using simple stone tools and dwelling in impermanent structures. The Neolithic Revolution, the transition to farming, is dated to around 10,000 BCE. This shift allowed for settled communities, population growth, and eventually the specialization of labor that enabled complex societies to emerge. The first recognized civilizations appeared around 4000 to 3000 BC in Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and China. These societies developed writing, monumental architecture, organized religion, and centralized government, the hallmarks of what we call civilization. This neat progression from primitive to advanced has dominated our understanding of human development for generations. It's a comforting narrative of steady improvement, from stone tools to smartphones in an unbroken line of progress. But this timeline contains a curious anomaly. At precisely the point when humans were supposedly making the transition from hunting to farming, around 9600 BCE, someone built Göbekli Tepe in what is now Turkey. This massive complex of precisely carved multi-ton stone pillars arranged in circular formations predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years and the Great Pyramid of Giza by 7,000 years. According to conventional history, it should not exist. The builders of Göbekli Tepe created a site of stunning sophistication during a time when humans were supposed to be simple hunter-gatherers, without metallurgy, writing, or even pottery. Its existence alone forces a reconsideration of human capabilities in the so-called prehistoric era. More puzzling still, after flourishing for over 1,000 years, the builders deliberately buried the entire complex under thousands of tons of earth. Why would a supposedly primitive society invest such enormous effort to conceal their greatest achievement? Göbekli Tepe is not an isolated anomaly. Around the world, evidence suggests that significant knowledge and technological capability existed far earlier than conventional timelines allow. In Peru and Bolivia, structures like Sacsayhuaman and Pumapunku display stonework of such precision that modern engineers struggle to explain how it was accomplished without advanced tools. Enormous blocks fit together with seamless precision. The Great Pyramid of Giza, though dated to around 2500 BCE, contains engineering features that would be challenging to replicate even today. It's aligned to true north with an accuracy of 3/60th of a degree and incorporates advanced mathematical principles. These sites share common characteristics: precise astronomical alignments, sophisticated mathematics embedded in their design, and construction techniques that manipulate stone weights far beyond what conventional history suggests was possible at the time. What makes this pattern more intriguing is that many of these sites appear to be built on top of older, even more sophisticated foundations. It's as if later cultures built upon the remnants of a more advanced predecessor they didn't fully understand. The period around 9600 BCE is particularly significant. This date appears repeatedly in ancient accounts, most famously in Plato's dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, which place the destruction of Atlantis at precisely this time. For centuries, Atlantis was dismissed as pure invention. But the date Plato gives corresponds exactly with the end of the Younger Dryas, a period of dramatic climate change that saw temperatures plummet and then suddenly warm again around 9600 BCE. This climatic event coincided with the extinction of dozens of large mammal species across North America and significant changes in human settlement patterns worldwide. Something dramatic happened at exactly the time Plato's account places a global catastrophe. More curious still, this date aligns with a phenomenon known as the precession of the equinoxes, a 25,920-year cycle caused by Earth's wobble on its axis. Ancient cultures from Egypt to Mexico demonstrate knowledge of this cycle in their mythology and architecture. How did supposedly primitive people without writing or advanced mathematics recognize and record a celestial cycle that takes nearly 26,000 years to complete? The conventional explanation that they simply observed it seems insufficient. A more provocative possibility is that this knowledge was inherited from an earlier, more astronomically advanced civilization, one whose existence ended catastrophically around 9600 BCE, leaving only fragments of its knowledge to be preserved by survivors. This brings us to perhaps the most persistent global myth, the flood narrative. Over 600 distinct cultures worldwide share stories of a catastrophic deluge that nearly ended humanity, with only a few survivors remaining to rebuild. These flood myths show remarkable consistency in their details. Divine warning to a chosen individual, construction of a vessel, preservation of animals and seeds, and eventual landfall on a mountain after the waters recede. From the Epic of Gilgamesh to the biblical Noah, from Native American legends to Hindu scriptures, this story persists across cultures that had no contact with each other. Either this represents the most widespread coincidence in human storytelling, or it records a shared experience. Chapter 4. Beneath the Surface. The first compelling evidence for our investigation comes from beneath the waves. As the last ice age ended approximately 11,700 years ago, sea levels rose dramatically, by some estimates more than 400 feet globally. This wasn't a gradual process spread evenly over millennia. Geological evidence suggests there were periods of rapid, catastrophic flooding, meltwater pulses that could raise sea levels by dozens of feet in mere decades. Consider what this would mean for any coastal civilization existing at that time. Their ports, cities, and farmlands would have been swallowed by rising seas within a single generation. Exactly the scenario described in countless flood myths. If advanced societies existed primarily along coastlines, as most civilizations throughout history have, their physical evidence would now lie underwater, beyond the reach of conventional archaeology until recent decades. Marine archaeology has indeed begun discovering submerged structures that challenge our timeline. Off the coast of India, the Gulf of Cambay contains underwater ruins dating back at least 9,500 years, predating Mesopotamia by thousands of years. Near Okinawa, Japan, the Yanaguni Monument features massive straight edges, perfect right angles, and precise terracing. While some geologists argue these are natural formations, others point to characteristics that appear unmistakably designed. Even more intriguing are the underwater structures off Cuba's western coast. Discovered in 2001, sonar surveys revealed what appears to be an urban complex of pyramids, roads, and buildings, all now more than 2,000 feet below sea level. For such structures to have been submerged to that depth requires them to have been built when sea levels were dramatically lower, placing their construction during or before the last ice age, at least 12,000 years ago. On land, we find equally puzzling evidence. The Sphinx in Egypt shows signs of water erosion inconsistent with the desert climate it has experienced during its CONVENTIONAL dating period, 4,500 years ago. Geologists like Dr. Robert Schoch of Boston University argue that the distinctive vertical furrowing on the Sphinx's body and enclosure was caused by heavy rainfall that the region hasn't experienced since the end of the last ice age. If correct, this would place the Sphinx's construction thousands of years earlier than Egyptologists claim, making it a remnant of a civilization that existed before dynastic Egypt, perhaps even before the catastrophe that ended the last ice age. Similarly, the immense stone platform beneath Baalbek in Lebanon contains quarried blocks weighing up to 1,650 tons, including the famous stone of the pregnant woman that remains in its quarry, fully cut but never moved. Conventional history attributes this site to the Romans, but the foundation stones predate Roman engineering by thousands of years. How did the builders move these massive stones with such precision? The question remains unanswered. Perhaps most compelling is how these megalithic sites relate to one another. When plotted on the globe, many ancient monuments align along specific great circles, geometric relationships that suggest a global system of measurement and placement. These alignments include sites supposedly built by cultures separated by oceans and millennia with no known contact. The probability of such precise geometric relationships occurring by chance is mathematically negligible. Could these sites represent the remnants of a global civilization? If so, what happened to it? The answer may lie in a catastrophic event that occurred approximately 12,800 years ago, the beginning of the Younger Dryas period. Recent scientific evidence suggests that Earth experienced an extraterrestrial impact at this time. A massive comet or asteroid, or perhaps fragments of one, struck the North American ice sheet with devastating consequences. The impact instantly melted thousands of cubic miles of ice, triggering continental-scale flooding. The debris thrown into the atmosphere blocked sunlight, causing global temperatures to plummet by as much as 18 degrees Fahrenheit within decades. This abrupt climate change lasted for over 1,000 years, devastating ecosystems worldwide. The evidence for this event includes a distinctive layer of platinum, iridium, and nanodiamonds found across 4 continents, materials typically associated with cosmic impacts. In North America, more than 3/4 of the large animal species went extinct during this period. Human populations also experienced dramatic declines and cultural disruptions globally, precisely when flood myths placed their catastrophes. When the Younger Dryas ended around 9600 BCE, temperatures rose with similar suddenness, exactly matching Plato's date for Atlantis' destruction. The rapid melting of remaining ice sheets would have caused another pulse of catastrophic flooding. This scenario, an extraterrestrial impact followed by dramatic climate swings and global flooding, would explain why so many cultures preserve memories of fire from the sky, followed by devastating waters. It would also explain the curious gap in our archaeological record, why sophisticated knowledge seems to disappear and then gradually reemerge thousands of years later, often in simplified or misunderstood forms. The survivors of such a catastrophe would have faced unimaginable challenges. With their centers of learning destroyed, their infrastructure ruined, and their population decimated, they would have been forced to focus on immediate survival rather than preserving knowledge. Yet tantalizingly, some knowledge does appear to have been deliberately preserved. Across ancient cultures, we find sophisticated astronomical concepts encoded in myth, architecture, and ritual, as if designed to transmit complex information through cultural memory. The ancient Sumerian kings list begins with rulers who lived for tens of thousands of years before the flood, then transitions to more realistic lifespans afterward, as if marking a division between a lost golden age and the historical period we recognize. In Egypt, Early dynastic writings speak of the Shamsu-Hor, the followers of Horus, who brought civilization after a great destruction. These beings are described as possessing advanced knowledge that they taught to the ancestors of the Egyptians. Similar accounts appear worldwide, stories of culture-bearing figures who arrived after a great catastrophe to teach agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, and architecture to survivors struggling to rebuild. These tales may preserve cultural memories of actual knowledge transmission. But here we encounter the most disturbing question of all. If such an advanced civilization existed and was destroyed so completely that only fragments of its knowledge survived, what does this tell us about our own vulnerability? We stand today at a similar precipice, a civilization of global reach, technological sophistication, and environmental impact. Yet our knowledge exists primarily in forms that could be easily lost. Digital data dependent on complex infrastructure, specialized knowledge held by few. If Earth experienced another cosmic impact, another rapid climate shift, or another catastrophic flood, how much of our knowledge would survive? Would future civilizations, thousands of years hence, piece together our existence from enigmatic ruins? And most chillingly, are we approaching the same point in the cycle that destroyed our predecessors? Is there a warning encoded in these ancient sites and stories, a message left by those who came before, trying to alert us to dangers they could not overcome? The evidence suggests we are not the first global civilization to arise on Earth. We may instead be the latest in a cycle of rise and fall, inheritors of both the achievements and the vulnerabilities of those who came before us. As we continue this investigation, remember that we're not merely examining academic curiosities. We're potentially recovering our own forgotten history, and with it, insights that might be crucial for our survival. What you'll see next will challenge everything you thought you knew about human capabilities in the distant past. The precision of ancient stonework, the mathematical knowledge encoded in prehistoric monuments, and the sophisticated astronomy preserved in myth all point to an inescapable conclusion. Approximately 12,000 years ago, something or someone wiped the slate of civilization nearly clean. The evidence lies scattered around us in stone and story, in sunken ruins and astronomical alignments. We've been missing it only because we haven't known how to look. Chapter 5: Shattered Certainties. As we continue our journey into this forbidden territory of human history, we must confront the contradictions that have been hiding in plain sight, anomalies that the established narrative cannot adequately explain. Consider the Great Sphinx of Egypt. According to Egyptologists, it was carved around 2500 BCE during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre. This dating fits neatly into the conventional timeline of Egyptian civilization, which supposedly began around 3100 BCE. Yet the body of the Sphinx tells a different story. The distinctive vertical erosion patterns that mark its limestone body and the enclosure around it present a profound problem for mainstream archaeology. These erosion patterns are characteristic of prolonged exposure to heavy rainfall, not the occasional desert cloudbursts of the past 5,000 years, but consistent, driving rain over extended periods. The kind of rainfall Egypt hasn't experienced since the end of the last ice age. Geologist Robert Schoch examined these patterns in the 1990s and concluded that the Sphinx must have been carved before 5000 BCE, potentially thousands of years before. Egypt was supposed to have developed the social organization necessary for such monumental works. When Schoch presented his findings, he was met with fierce resistance from Egyptologists. Yet his conclusions were based not on speculation but on geological evidence, the science of how water erodes limestone over time. This raises a troubling question. If the Sphinx is thousands of years older than believed, who built it? What forgotten civilization had the capability and motivation to create such a monument before Egypt itself existed? Similar contradictions appear across the archaeological record. In Peru, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman near Cusco, features walls constructed from limestone blocks weighing up to 200 tons, fitted together with such precision that not even a sheet of paper can pass between them. Conventional archaeology attributes this site to the Inca Empire of the 15th century CE, but the Inca themselves told Spanish conquistadors that they didn't build these structures. They found them already ancient when they arrived in the region. The construction techniques used at Sacsayhuaman involve a level of precision that would be challenging even with modern equipment. The stones show evidence of being shaped with technology the Inca simply didn't possess. More puzzling still is how these enormous blocks were transported up steep mountainsides and placed with such accuracy. The official explanation that thousands of laborers dragged them using ropes and logs seems insufficient when examining the actual stonework. In Lebanon, the Temple of Jupiter at Baalbek sits atop a platform containing the largest worked stones in the world. The famous trilithum consists of 3 adjacent blocks, each weighing approximately 800 tons. Even more massive is the Stone of the South, still in its quarry a half-mile away, weighing an estimated 1,650 tons. For perspective, modern cranes struggle with loads over 300 tons. Yet these blocks were quarried, moved, and placed with precision thousands of years ago. While conventionally attributed to Roman engineering, the foundation platform predates the Roman presence in the region by millennia. The Romans built their temple on top of a much older and more sophisticated structure whose origins remain unexplained. Then there's Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a site so anomalous that its discovery in 1994 forced archaeologists to reconsider the entire timeline of human civilization. Carbon dating places its construction around 9600 BCE, over 7,000 years before Stonehenge. The implications are staggering. Göbekli Tepe was built by people who, according to conventional history, should have been simple hunter-gatherers without metallurgy, writing, or even pottery. Yet they somehow organized massive labor forces and carved multi-ton pillars with precise relief carvings. These pillars are arranged in sophisticated circular patterns with clear astronomical alignments. The site contains at least 20 such circles, most still unexcavated. The largest stones weigh up to 50 tons and show evidence of advanced carving techniques. What makes Göbekli Tepe even more perplexing is that after functioning for over 1,000 years, it was deliberately buried under thousands of tons of earth. Why would a supposedly primitive society expend such enormous effort to conceal their greatest achievement? The conventional explanation that hunter-gatherers spontaneously developed the capability for monumental architecture before developing agriculture or metallurgy contradicts everything we thought we knew about how civilizations develop. A more coherent explanation would be that Göbekli Tepe represents the work of survivors from an earlier, more advanced civilization, one attempting to preserve crucial knowledge after a catastrophic event had destroyed their world. This pattern of seemingly impossible ancient construction appears worldwide. On the island of Nuku-Hiva in the Pacific, the ancient site of Taihai features basalt blocks weighing up to 30 tons, precisely fitted without mortar in a region with no known history of advanced civilization. In Japan, the megalithic structures of Yonaguni, now submerged beneath the ocean, display right angles and terraced formations that many researchers believe could not have formed naturally. If artificial, they must have been constructed when sea levels were much lower. On Easter Island, the massive Moai statues represent another anomaly. The conventional explanation that a small population of Polynesian settlers created these monuments using primitive tools fails to account for their number, size, and the precision of their carving. These contradictions aren't limited to stone monuments. The Antikythera mechanism, recovered from an ancient shipwreck in 1901, represents a level of mechanical sophistication that wasn't supposed to exist in the ancient world. This 2,000-year-old analog computer contains at least 30 precisely engineered bronze gears that tracked astronomical movements with remarkable accuracy. Its technological sophistication wouldn't be matched in Europe until the development of mechanical clocks in the 14th century. Similarly, ancient Baghdad batteries, ceramic jars, containing copper cylinders and iron rods that appear to function as galvanic cells, suggest knowledge of electricity thousands of years before its supposed discovery in the modern era. Ancient maps present another category of troubling evidence. The Piri-Reis map, compiled in 1513 but based on much older source maps, shows coastlines of Antarctica that weren't supposed to be discovered until the modern era. More significantly, it shows these coastlines without ice, a condition that hasn't existed for at least 6,000 years. How did the creators of the source maps know what lay beneath Antarctica's ice sheet? The conventional explanation has no answer. The contradictions extend to linguistic and cultural similarities between civilizations supposedly isolated from one another. From pyramid structures appearing independently on different continents to similar flood myths sharing specific details, the patterns suggest shared origins. When examined collectively, these anomalies form a compelling pattern. The archaeological record contains numerous fingerprints of advanced knowledge and technology appearing in periods and places where they shouldn't exist according to our current understanding of human development. Rather than isolated curiosities, these contradictions may be glimpses of a lost chapter in human history, fragments of knowledge and achievement that survived a global catastrophe, preserved imperfectly by the survivors who rebuilt civilization from its ashes. Chapter 6. Echoes in Myth and Stone. Myths and legends have traditionally been dismissed by historians as mere stories, colorful cultural inventions with little factual basis. But what if many ancient myths actually preserve memories of real events, encoded in symbolic language to survive through generations? The most widespread of these myths, the Great Flood narrative, appears in over 600 distinct cultural traditions worldwide. From Mesopotamia's Epic of Gilgamesh to the Maya Popol Vuh, from Norse mythology to Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, the core elements remain remarkably consistent. These stories typically feature divine warning to a chosen individual, instructions to build a vessel, a world-destroying deluge, and the preservation of animals and seeds. After the waters recede, the survivors rebuild civilization, often with knowledge given by the gods. For centuries, these accounts were treated as religious allegory. But geological evidence now confirms that the end of the Younger Dryas period, around 9600 BCE, did indeed coincide with catastrophic flooding as ice sheets rapidly melted. This precise dating aligns with Plato's account of Atlantis, which he specifically places 9,000 years before Solon's visit to Egypt, corresponding to approximately 9600 BCE. Plato describes Atlantis as an advanced island civilization destroyed in a single day and night of misfortune. While Atlantis has been dismissed as fiction, Plato insists several times that his account is factual, not allegorical. He provides specific details about Atlantis' location, physical features, government, and technology that suggest he was drawing from actual historical records. The Greek philosopher describes concentric rings of land and water surrounding the central island, a distinctive geographical feature. He details its agricultural systems, architectural achievements, and naval power with the precision of a historical account rather than a fictional narrative. Similar legends appear across cultures. The Hindu Puranas describe previous worlds destroyed by flood, with knowledge preserved by 7 sages. Native American traditions speak of previous suns or world ages ended by different catastrophes. The Maya describe 4 previous worlds before our current age, each ended by different disasters. Their calendar system tracks vast cosmic cycles spanning thousands of years. Knowledge that hunter-gatherers with no writing system supposedly developed independently. In Egypt, early dynastic texts referred to the Göbekli Tepe, or first time, a golden age when gods walked among humans before a great destruction. The Egyptian Book of the Dead contains sophisticated astronomical knowledge encoded in mythological language. These myths consistently describe a cycle, a golden age of advancement, a catastrophic destruction, often by water, and a rebuilding guided by survivors who possess knowledge from the previous world. This pattern matches what geological evidence tells us about the end of the last ice age. But myths aren't the only evidence. Across continents, we find what archaeologists call out-of-place artifacts, objects that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of what ancient cultures were capable of creating. In Colombia, the Quimbaya artifacts include golden objects resembling modern aircraft, complete with delta wings, stabilizers, and landing gear. Created around 1000 CE, these objects display aerodynamic properties that their creators shouldn't have understood. Ancient Indian texts describe vimanas, flying machines with detailed propulsion systems and capabilities. While conventionally interpreted as mythological, these descriptions contain specific technical details that suggest they may derive from observation rather than imagination. In Iraq, the Baghdad Battery, a 2,000-year-old clay jar containing a copper cylinder and iron rod, generates electric current when filled with an acidic liquid. Dozens of these devices have been found, suggesting intentional rather than accidental design. At Dendera Temple in Egypt, reliefs depict what appeared to be electrical lighting devices, bulbous objects containing snake-like filaments supported by what resemble insulators. The absence of soot on the temple ceiling supports the notion that non-flame lighting may have been used. In 1898, archaeologists discovered a complex mechanical object in a 2,000-year-old tomb in Saqqara, Egypt. This wooden bird model featured aerodynamic properties and design elements consistent with modern aircraft principles, yet predated human flight by millennia. Perhaps most puzzling are ancient descriptions of atomic warfare. The Mahabharata, an ancient Indian text, describes weapons that resemble modern nuclear bombs, including an incandescent column of smoke and fire as bright as 10,000 suns that produced mass death and birth defects. In the desert regions of Egypt, Iraq, and India, archaeologists have discovered areas of vitrified sand, glass-like material that forms when sand is heated to extremely high temperatures. Some of these sites show radiation levels significantly above background readings. At Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan, archaeologists found skeletons lying in the streets, many holding hands as if felled suddenly. The city shows evidence of a sudden abandonment and destruction by intense heat rather than conventional warfare or natural disaster. Rock art in India's Sharama region depicts beings wearing what appear to be spacesuits and carrying objects resembling weapons. Dating to approximately 10,000 years ago, these images have no conventional explanation within the accepted historical framework. In Egypt, the so-called Dendera light bulb depicts what appears to be an electrical lighting system, complete with what resembles a filament, power source, and insulator. The temple where these carvings appear shows no evidence of soot that would result from conventional torch lighting. The Nazca lines in Peru present another mystery. Enormous geoglyphs only recognizable from high altitude, created by people who supposedly had no means of flight. Some depict animals extinct for thousands of years before the line's conventional dating. The ancient city of Pumapunku in Bolivia features stone blocks cut with such precision that they fit together perfectly without mortar, despite weighing up to 800 tons each. The cuts include perfect right angles, drill holes, and standardized components that suggest mass production techniques. These stones show evidence of machine tooling, consistent cuts that would be nearly impossible to achieve with hand tools. Some blocks feature perfect right angles and uniform thickness that would challenge even modern stone-cutting technology to replicate. When we examine ancient knowledge systems, similar anomalies appear. The Maya calculated the solar year to within 17 seconds of its actual value. They tracked Venus with greater accuracy than European astronomers achieved until the Renaissance. Ancient Sumerians described all 8 planets in our solar system, including Uranus and Neptune, which aren't visible to the naked eye. Their cylinder seals depict the relative sizes of planets correctly. How did they obtain this knowledge without telescopes? The Great Pyramid at Giza encodes the value of pi, the golden ratio, and the exact circumference of Earth in its proportions. It aligns to true north with an accuracy of 3/60th of a degree, precision that wasn't matched until modern times. These out-of-place artifacts and knowledge systems suggest that our ancestors possessed capabilities far beyond what conventional history acknowledges. The evidence points to sophisticated understanding being preserved, albeit imperfectly, after some catastrophic reset. What emerges is a pattern. Across cultures and continents, we find both physical artifacts and knowledge systems that shouldn't exist according to the conventional timeline of human development. Rather than dismissing these as coincidences or misinterpretations, perhaps we should consider the possibility that they represent fragments of a lost global civilization, one that was nearly erased from history by a catastrophic event approximately 12,000 years ago. Chapter 7. The Forgotten Warning. As we assemble these scattered pieces of evidence, a more troubling question emerges. If an advanced global civilization was indeed destroyed approximately 12,000 years ago, what are the implications for our own society? The stakes of this investigation extend far beyond academic curiosity. If we are not the first advanced civilization to arise on Earth, we must confront the possibility that we are vulnerable to the same forces that destroyed our predecessors. The geological record confirms that Earth periodically experiences catastrophic events capable of devastating global civilizations. From asteroid impacts to supervolcano eruptions, from solar flares to rapid climate shifts, these forces operate independently of human development. What's particularly unsettling is that many ancient texts don't just describe past catastrophes. They warn of cyclical destruction. The Maya, Hindu, Egyptian, and Norse traditions all speak of world ages that end and begin in predictable cycles. These traditions often link these cycles to astronomical phenomena. The precession of the equinoxes, Earth's 25,920-year wobble on its axis, appears in numerous ancient knowledge systems, encoded in architecture, mythology, and religious symbolism. This knowledge of precession is itself an anomaly. The full cycle takes nearly 26,000 years to complete, far longer than any civilization was supposed to have existed. How did ancient cultures recognize this pattern without thousands of years of continuous astronomical observation? One possibility is that they inherited this knowledge from an earlier, longer-lived civilization. Another is that the knowledge was deliberately preserved after a catastrophe, encoded in forms that could survive cultural collapse, stone monuments, myths, and religious practices. The Great Year, this precessional cycle, is divided in many ancient traditions into 12 ages or houses, each lasting approximately 2,160 years. We are currently transitioning from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius in this cosmic cycle. Many ancient texts associate different ages with different qualities and events. Some traditions speak of a dark age, the Hindu Kali Yuga, giving way to a new golden age. Others warn of purification by fire or water at specific transition points in the cycle. If these traditions preserve actual knowledge rather than superstition, they may contain warnings about cyclical catastrophic events linked to astronomical cycles, warnings left by survivors of a previous collapse for future civilizations to heed. Recent scientific discoveries lend credence to this possibility. Evidence for the Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis continues to mount, with platinum, iridium, and nanodiamond deposits found across 4 continents in a layer dating precisely to 12,800 years ago. This evidence suggests Earth encountered a fragmented comet or asteroid that triggered global cataclysms, massive flooding from rapid ice melt, worldwide wildfires from the atmospheric explosion, and a sudden return to Ice Age conditions from the debris cloud blocking sunlight. The impact would have triggered earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions worldwide. For any civilization existing at that time, the effect would have been apocalyptic, exactly the scenario described in numerous ancient texts. What makes this particularly relevant is that Earth regularly passes through meteor streams associated with cometary debris. The Taurid meteor stream, which Earth crosses twice yearly, contains fragments of Comet Inc., a body that may have been much larger in the past. Astronomical data suggest this stream may contain larger, potentially hazardous objects that Earth encounters in cycles of several thousand years. The timing aligns disturbingly well with evidence of past impact events and the catastrophe described in ancient accounts. If our ancestors experienced such an event and some survived, they would have faced an almost unimaginable scenario, a world transformed overnight, with most of their civilization destroyed and the climate itself rendered hostile to human flourishing. The knowledge they most urgently needed to preserve would have been practical information for survival, astronomical data to predict future impact events, and warnings for distant generations about the cyclical nature of these catastrophes. This may explain why ancient monuments worldwide encode astronomical alignments with such precision. Sites like Göbekli Tepe, Stonehenge, the Giza Pyramids, and numerous others may function as both calendars and warnings, stone records that could survive when all else was lost. It may also explain the curious emphasis in ancient texts on celestial events and cycles. What modern readers interpret as religious or mystical content may actually be encoded astronomical knowledge, a time capsule of crucial information disguised as myth and ritual. The question then becomes, are we approaching another dangerous period in these cycles? Some researchers point to disturbingly similar conditions now to those preceding the Younger Dryas event, including Earth's position in relation to known meteor streams. Our civilization differs from our predecessors in crucial ways. We possess scientific understanding and technological capabilities that may allow us to detect and potentially divert threatening objects from space. We understand climate systems in ways our ancestors could not. Yet we also share vulnerabilities. Our global civilization depends on complex, interconnected systems for food production, energy distribution, and communication. A significant disruption to these systems could trigger cascading failures with devastating consequences. More concerning still is how we store and transmit knowledge. Despite our technological advancement, most of our information exists in forms far more vulnerable than stone monuments and oral traditions. Digital data dependent on electricity and specific hardware to access. A sufficiently powerful solar flare, like the Carrington event of 1859, could destroy electronic systems worldwide. An impact event or supervolcano eruption could disrupt global infrastructure for decades. How much of our knowledge would survive such disruptions? Perhaps most troubling is that we may be accelerating toward catastrophe through our own actions. Climate change, biodiversity loss, topsoil depletion, and other anthropogenic crises may be triggering instabilities in Earth systems that could compound any natural disaster. The ancient warnings encoded in myth and stone may be more relevant now than at any time since they were created. We may be the generation that either heeds these warnings or suffers the consequences of ignoring them. This brings us to the heart of why this investigation matters so deeply. If we are indeed recovering fragments of knowledge from a lost civilization, we may be receiving messages specifically intended for a time like ours, a civilization approaching the same dangerous transition point. What appears increasingly likely is that human civilization has risen and fallen before, not once but potentially multiple times. We may be the inheritors of a cycle that stretches back much further than conventional history acknowledges. The evidence suggests that approximately 12,000 years ago, a thriving global civilization was nearly erased by catastrophe. The survivors preserved what knowledge they could, encoding it in forms designed to survive millennia, massive stone structures, and mythic narratives. As we decode these messages from the past, we confront a profound choice. Will we dismiss them as curiosities, or will we recognize them as urgent warnings from those who experienced firsthand what we may soon face? The stakes could not be higher. If the cycle repeats and finds us unprepared, our achievements may become ruins for some future civilization to puzzle over. Our knowledge lost, our warnings unheeded, our existence reduced to cryptic myths about a golden age destroyed by angry gods. But there is hope in this recognition. Unlike our predecessors, we possess the scientific understanding to comprehend these cycles and potentially to break them. We have the technology to detect threats from space and possibly to divert them. What we may lack is the wisdom to recognize the patterns and the will to act on that knowledge. This is why recovering our true history matters, not just to satisfy curiosity about the past, but to secure the future of human civilization. As we continue our investigation, the evidence becomes more compelling and the implications more profound. What began as an exploration of archaeological anomalies has become something far more urgent: the recovery of a warning left specifically for us. And the warning appears to be this: what happened before can happen again. The cycle that destroyed our predecessors could claim us as well, unless we learn from their experience and take action while there is still time. The next phase of our investigation brings us to the most controversial evidence: specific sites, artifacts, and documents that appear to preserve direct knowledge from this lost civilization. What you're about to see challenges not just history, but our entire understanding of human potential. Chapter 8. Beyond Conjecture. As we've examined the evidence for a lost advanced civilization destroyed approximately 12,000 years ago, we must now consider the most compelling explanations for this pattern of anomalies. Three major theories have emerged, each with supporting evidence and significant implications. The first and most conservative theory is what we might call the independent development model. This view maintains that conventional history is largely correct, but significantly underestimates the capabilities of ancient peoples working with primitive tools. Proponents argue that remarkable achievements like the Great Pyramid, Göbekli Tepe, and Sacsayhuaman resulted from ingenious solutions developed independently by separate cultures. They point to experimental archaeology showing how seemingly impossible feats might have been accomplished. For example, researchers have demonstrated that large stone blocks can be moved using wooden rollers, lever systems, and teams of laborers. They suggest that with sufficient time and manpower, monuments of astonishing precision could be created using stone and copper tools. This theory acknowledges that conventional timelines may need adjustment, but rejects the notion of a global advanced civilization. It attributes similarities between distant cultures to convergent evolution, different groups independently developing similar solutions to similar problems. While this explanation maintains academic orthodoxy, it struggles to account for several key anomalies: the sudden appearance of sophisticated astronomy, mathematics, and engineering in supposedly primitive societies, the consistent encoding of precessional knowledge in ancient sites, and the global distribution of flood myths. The second theory, which we might call the diffusionist model, proposes that a sophisticated maritime civilization existed before the end of the last ice age, not necessarily globally advanced, but capable of ocean travel and possessing significant technological knowledge. In this view, this pre-catastrophe civilization established outposts around the world, sharing knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and construction techniques. Their trading network connected distant regions, explaining similarities in megalithic architecture and mythological themes. When catastrophe struck, whether through comet impact, solar flare, or some other mechanism, this maritime civilization collapsed. Survivors in various regions preserve fragments of knowledge, leading to the spontaneous emergence of advanced concepts in supposedly primitive societies. This theory finds support in recent archaeological discoveries, showing that seafaring capabilities developed much earlier than previously thought. Evidence of long-distance trade in the Paleolithic era suggests humans were crossing significant ocean distances at least 30,000 years ago. It also better explains the distribution of certain cultural motifs and technologies across continents. The abrupt appearance of agriculture in multiple locations around 10,000 BCE, for instance, might represent the preservation of knowledge by survivors rather than independent discovery. The third and most radical theory is the advanced global civilization model. This proposes that a technologically sophisticated global culture existed before the Younger Dryas catastrophe, one with capabilities approaching or possibly exceeding our own in certain domains. This civilization would have possessed advanced knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, agriculture, and engineering. It may have harnessed electricity, understood principles of flight, and developed sophisticated methods of stone cutting and transportation that we have yet to rediscover. When catastrophe struck approximately 12,800 years ago, this global network collapsed almost completely. The survivors, drastically reduced in number and capability, preserved what knowledge they could, leading to the curious inheritance pattern we see in early historical cultures. This theory explains why cultures like the Maya, Egyptians, and Sumerians appear to begin their civilizations with their most impressive achievements, followed by periods of decline rather than gradual development. They were working from inherited knowledge they couldn't fully replicate. It also accounts for why many ancient texts describe their civilizations being founded by gods or culture bearers who arrived after a great destruction, bringing knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, and architecture. These may have been survivors of the collapsed global civilization. The evidence for this model includes underwater structures now submerged by rising sea levels, sophisticated astronomical knowledge encoded in ancient monuments, and the presence of seemingly anachronistic technologies in the archaeological record. Each of these theories has strengths and weaknesses. The independent development model maintains scientific conservatism but requires increasingly complex explanations for mounting anomalies. It struggles to account for why similar solutions appeared simultaneously across the globe. The diffusionist model acknowledges the evidence for early maritime contact but doesn't fully explain the level of sophistication found in the earliest monumental architecture. It serves as a middle ground, but may underestimate the advancement of pre-catastrophe human societies. The advanced global civilization model most comprehensively explains the pattern of evidence, but requires accepting a dramatic revision of human history. It challenges fundamental assumptions about the linear progress of human technological development. When evaluating these theories, we must consider which best explains the full range of evidence without requiring special exceptions or dismissals. The principle of Occam's razor suggests that the simplest explanation covering all data points is likely closest to truth. Increasingly, archaeologists and geologists are finding that the conventional timeline of human civilization requires significant revision. The discovery of sites like Göbekli Tepe forces acknowledgement that monumental architecture predates the supposed beginning of civilization by thousands of years. Similarly, genetic studies of agricultural crops suggest they were domesticated far earlier than conventional models allow. Recent research indicates that certain varieties of wheat, barley, and legumes show evidence of selective breeding beginning well before 10,000 BCE. The dating of underwater structures off the coasts of India, Japan, and Cuba consistently points to occupation during the last ice age, when sea levels were much lower. These findings align with the timeline suggested by ancient texts for their antediluvian civilizations. Perhaps most compelling is how these theories align with recent geological evidence. The Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis has gained substantial scientific support, with physical evidence of a cosmic impact dated precisely to 12,800 years ago, exactly when ancient texts placed their great catastrophes. This impact would have triggered the very conditions described in flood myths worldwide: massive ice melt causing sea level rise, climate disruption leading to prolonged rainfall in some regions and drought in others, and the collapse of existing ecosystems and human settlements. When we integrate archaeological anomalies with geological evidence and traditional accounts from around the world, the pattern becomes difficult to dismiss. Something extraordinary happened approximately 12,800 years ago that profoundly disrupted human civilization and planetary systems. Whether this event destroyed a technologically advanced global civilization or merely a network of sophisticated maritime cultures, the evidence increasingly suggests that conventional history has missed a crucial chapter in human development, a chapter that may contain vital lessons for our future. Chapter 9. The Science of Memory. Recent scientific discoveries have dramatically strengthened the case for a catastrophic reset of human civilization in the distant past. These findings come not just from archaeology, but from geology, astronomy, genetics, and climatology, converging lines of evidence that can no longer be ignored. Perhaps most significant is the mounting evidence for the Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis. First proposed in 2007, this theory suggests that Earth encountered fragments of a large comet approximately 12,800 years ago, triggering global cataclysms and rapid climate change. Initially controversial, this hypothesis has gained substantial support through rigorous scientific investigation. Researchers have identified a distinctive layer in sediments across 4 continents containing materials associated with cosmic impacts: platinum, iridium, and nanodiamonds. These materials appear precisely at the Younger Dryas boundary, 12,800 years ago, alongside evidence of massive wildfires, rapid temperature change, and widespread extinction. The pattern matches exactly what would be expected from a cosmic impact event of global significance. In 2018, a 31-kilometer impact crater was discovered beneath Greenland's Hiawatha Glacier. While dating remains preliminary, initial evidence suggests it may correspond to the Younger Dryas boundary, potentially identifying one impact site from this event. Geochemical analysis of ice cores shows dramatic changes in atmospheric composition at precisely this time. These changes reflect massive biomass burning and environmental disruption on a scale that would have been catastrophic for any existing human societies. Sea level studies revealed that the end of the last ice age wasn't gradual. Instead, there were meltwater pulses, periods of extremely rapid sea level rise, with increases of up to 30 feet occurring in less than a century. Such rapid changes would have inundated coastal settlements almost overnight in geological terms. Any civilization concentrated along coastlines, as most human societies have been throughout history, would have seen their primary centers destroyed in a single generation. This timeline aligns perfectly with Plato's account of Atlantis, which he dates to 9,600 BCE, and describes as being swallowed by the sea in a catastrophic event. Once dismissed as fiction, his dating now corresponds precisely with a period of rapid sea level rise at the end of the Younger Dryas. Genetic studies reveal another piece of the puzzle. Analysis of human DNA shows evidence of a population bottleneck approximately 12,000 years ago, a sudden reduction in genetic diversity consistent with a catastrophic decrease in human population. Similarly, many animal species show genetic evidence of population crashes at this same time. The pattern suggests a global event that affected humans and wildlife alike, consistent with the worldwide extinction event documented in the paleontological record. Archaeological evidence increasingly supports a dramatic disruption of human societies during this period. Sites from Turkey to Peru show evidence of abandonment, destruction, or fundamental reorganization at precisely the time that cosmic impact evidence appears in the geological record. Perhaps most intriguing is new research into cultural memory and information transmission. Anthropologists have discovered that oral traditions can preserve accurate information over surprisingly long time frames when encoded in specialized formats like myths, rituals, and songs. Studies of Aboriginal Australian oral traditions have confirmed they preserved accurate descriptions of coastal flooding events and changing landscapes from over 10,000 years ago. These accounts match geological evidence of shoreline changes that occurred when sea levels rose at the end of the Ice Age. Similar research has verified the accuracy of Native American traditions describing coastal flooding, changing river courses, and volcanic eruptions that geological evidence dates to many thousands of years ago. These weren't fabrications, but preserved memories of actual events. This research fundamentally changes how we should interpret ancient flood myths. Rather than dismissing them as religious allegory or primitive explanations for natural phenomena, we should consider them potential records of actual catastrophic events witnessed by ancient peoples. When hundreds of separate cultures preserve remarkably similar accounts of a world-destroying flood, divine warning, and survival by boat, each with specific details like landing on a mountain after the waters recede, we may be hearing echoes of a real global catastrophe. New dating technologies have also forced reconsideration of key archaeological sites. Göbekli Tepe's construction, beginning around 9600 BCE, immediately after the end of the Younger Dryas, suggests it may represent knowledge preserved by survivors of the catastrophe. The site's distinctive T-shaped pillars are carved with animals including scorpions, foxes, and vultures arranged in specific patterns. Recent analysis suggests these may represent star constellations, encoding astronomical knowledge crucial for tracking seasonal changes and cosmic cycles. If correct, this interpretation means the builders of Göbekli Tepe possessed sophisticated astronomical knowledge at a time when humans were supposedly simple hunter-gatherers. This knowledge appears fully formed, without evidence of gradual development. Similar patterns appear at other sites worldwide. The Giza complex in Egypt, while conventionally dated much later, contains astronomical alignments that would have been accurate around 10,500 BCE, again, corresponding to the end of the Younger Dryas period. These astronomical encodings present a profound paradox. They preserve knowledge of celestial cycles that take thousands of years to observe. The precession of the equinoxes, a 25,920-year cycle, appears encoded in monuments and myths worldwide despite requiring multi-generational observation to detect. How did supposedly primitive societies recognize and record this cycle? The simplest explanation may be that they inherited this knowledge from an earlier, long-lived civilization that had accumulated astronomical observations over many generations. Another paradox emerges from ancient measurements. The megalithic yard, the Egyptian cubit, and similar units used in ancient monumental architecture worldwide show mathematical relationships to Earth's dimensions that would require sophisticated geodetic knowledge to derive. These measurement systems encode the circumference of Earth, the dimensions of the solar system, and mathematical constants like pi with precision that suggests actual calculation rather than coincidence. Yet their creators supposedly lacked the tools to make such measurements. The consistent use of these units across continents suggests not independent invention, but a common source. Perhaps knowledge preserved from a parent civilization that had developed advanced understanding of mathematics, geometry, and planetary measurement. We also face the paradox of ancient stonework. Sites worldwide feature precision cuts, perfect drilling, and interlocking blocks that modern engineers struggle to explain. The conventional explanation, copper tools and stone hammers, fails to account for the precision achieved. Recent experiments using replica ancient tools have failed to reproduce the quality of stonework found at sites like Pumapunku, Sacsayhuaman, and the Valley Temple near the Sphinx. This suggests either unknown techniques or technologies not recognized in the archaeological record. Perhaps the greatest paradox is the pattern of human development itself. Conventional history portrays a steady progression from primitive to advanced, a linear evolution of technology and social organization. But the archaeological evidence often contradicts this narrative. Many ancient cultures appear to begin with their most impressive achievements, followed by periods of decline rather than advancement. Egyptian pyramid construction, for instance, reached its peak with the earliest examples, with later pyramids showing decreasing sophistication. Similarly, Sumerian mathematics and astronomy appear fully developed in their earliest texts, without evidence of gradual discovery. The oldest Mayan sites feature their most sophisticated architecture and astronomical calculations, followed by less precise later developments. This pattern, initial sophistication followed by decline, matches what we would expect from societies working with inherited knowledge they couldn't fully replicate, rather than gradually developing new understanding through experimentation and discovery. When we integrate these scientific findings with the archaeological record and ancient accounts, a coherent alternative history emerges, one that resolves these paradoxes, but challenges our understanding of human development and our place in Earth's history. Chapter 10. The Pattern Revealed. Throughout this investigation, we've examined evidence from geology, archaeology, mythology, astronomy, and genetics. Now we must integrate these fragments into a coherent picture that explains the anomalies while remaining grounded in scientific evidence. The central revelation emerging from this evidence is both simple and profound. Human civilization is much older, has risen to greater heights, and has fallen further than conventional history acknowledges. Approximately 12,800 years ago, Earth experienced a cosmic impact event of catastrophic proportions. Fragments of a large comet struck the North American ice sheet, triggering continental-scale wildfires, rapid climate change, and massive flooding from melting ice. This event, now supported by substantial geological evidence, corresponds precisely with when ancient traditions worldwide placed their flood narratives and accounts of divine destruction. It marks the boundary between a world that was and the world we've inherited. Before this catastrophe, a network of advanced maritime cultures existed around the globe. These societies possessed sophisticated knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, agriculture, and engineering. They built monumental structures oriented to celestial alignments and encoded with precise mathematical relationships. This global culture wasn't necessarily more technologically advanced than our own in all respects, but it had developed specific knowledge systems to extraordinary levels, particularly in astronomy, geomatics, and megalithic construction techniques. The catastrophe destroyed the centers of this civilization, particularly coastal settlements now submerged beneath 400 feet of water. The survivors, drastically reduced in number and capability, preserved what knowledge they could through oral tradition, symbolic encoding, and monumental architecture. This preservation wasn't haphazard but deliberate. Key knowledge was encoded in forms designed to survive millennia. Massive stone structures aligned to astronomical events, myths with mnemonic features for accurate oral transmission, and measurement systems that incorporated mathematical constants. The knowledge most urgently preserved concerned celestial cycles, agricultural techniques, and warnings about cyclical catastrophes. These weren't superstitions, but practical information essential for rebuilding civilization and potentially avoiding future destruction. When we examine the earliest known historical civilizations, Sumer, Egypt, the Indus Valley, China, and Mesoamerica, we find them emerging with sophisticated knowledge already intact. Their initial achievements represent not the beginning of discovery, but the recovery of inherited wisdom. Their origin stories consistently describe culture bearers who arrived after a great destruction, bringing knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, writing, and architecture. These weren't gods, but survivors of the collapsed maritime civilization, preserving crucial knowledge for future generations. This pattern explains why these early civilizations show their greatest achievements at their beginnings, rather than after centuries of development. They were working from inherited knowledge they gradually lost, rather than building new understanding from scratch. It explains why we find sophisticated astronomical knowledge of cycles requiring thousands of years of observation in cultures that supposedly existed for only hundreds of years. This knowledge wasn't discovered anew, but preserved from the parent civilization. It explains the distribution of similar architectural techniques, mathematical concepts, and flood myths across continents. These weren't independent inventions, but fragments of a once unified knowledge system, preserved imperfectly by widely scattered survivors. Most significantly, it explains why we find evidence of advanced knowledge appearing out of time, sophisticated understanding in periods when it shouldn't exist according to conventional history. These aren't anomalies, but glimpses of the actual capabilities of our ancestors. The great megalithic sites worldwide, from Göbekli Tepe to the Great Pyramid, from Sacsayhuaman to Easter Island, represent not just monuments but messages. They encode information their builders considered essential for future civilizations to recover after their own inevitable collapse. This information includes precise astronomical alignments marking the precession of the equinoxes, mathematical relationships encoding fundamental constants, and construction techniques demonstrating principles of geometry, physics, and engineering. The most important message encoded in these monuments may be a warning that Earth periodically experiences catastrophic events capable of destroying civilization, and that these events may follow predictable cosmic cycles related to Earth's journey through the galaxy. Göbekli Tepe, built immediately after the Younger Dryas Impact, appears specifically designed to track astronomical alignments associated with the cometary debris stream that may have caused the catastrophe. It may represent an early warning system for future impacts. Similarly, other ancient sites worldwide demonstrate precise tracking of celestial cycles, possibly to predict future astronomical events that could threaten Earth. This knowledge wasn't superstition, but survival information, a warning for future generations. What emerges is a profound revelation about human history. We are not the first global civilization to arise on Earth, nor likely the most advanced in all respects. We are the inheritors of a cycle of rise and fall that may stretch back much further than we've recognized. The implications are both humbling and empowering. We must acknowledge that our ancestors possessed capabilities we've underestimated and knowledge we've yet to fully recover. But we also possess scientific understanding and technological capabilities they lacked. By integrating their preserved wisdom with our modern knowledge, we may be able to break the cycle of catastrophe and collapse. We can use our technology to detect and potentially divert threatening objects from space, while heeding the warnings encoded in ancient monuments. This investigation reveals not just a lost chapter of human history, but a message from our ancestors, one they considered important enough to preserve, in stone and story for thousands of years, hoping it would eventually reach a civilization capable of understanding and acting upon it. The message is clear. What happened before can happen again. The forces that destroyed our predecessors still exist, operating on timescales longer than recorded history, but well within the span of human civilization. Our future depends on recognizing and addressing these threats. This isn't merely an academic revision of history, but a call to action. By recovering our true past, we gain insights crucial for securing our future. The amnesia that has hidden our civilization's cyclical nature from us may be the greatest threat we face. As we stand at this crossroads, armed with both recovered ancient knowledge and modern scientific capabilities, we have an unprecedented opportunity to break the cycle. We can be the generation that heeds the warnings left by our ancestors and charts a different course. The evidence suggests that approximately 12,800 years ago, an advanced global civilization was nearly erased by cosmic catastrophe. The survivors preserved what knowledge they could, passing it down through generations in hope that one day humanity would recover what was lost. That day has arrived. We now possess the scientific understanding to comprehend these ancient warnings and the technological capability to act upon them. The question is whether we will recognize and accept our true history in time to change our future. This investigation has taken us from the enigmatic ruins of lost civilizations to the cutting edge of modern science. The picture that emerges transforms our understanding of human history and potential, not diminishing our achievements but placing them in a larger context of cyclical rise and fall. As we conclude this journey through humanity's hidden past, we return to where we began, standing at the edge of history, contemplating the possibility that everything we thought we knew about our origins may be incomplete. The evidence we've examined from geology, archaeology, mythology, astronomy, and genetics weaves together into a compelling alternative narrative of human history. A narrative where civilization has risen and fallen before, where knowledge has been lost and partially recovered multiple times. This perspective doesn't diminish human achievement, but contextualizes it within a grander cycle. We are not the first to reach for the stars, nor likely the last. We are participants in an ongoing story of human striving, catastrophe, resilience, and renewal. The monuments left by our ancestors were not merely tombs or temples, but time capsules, deliberate attempts to preserve crucial knowledge across millennia. They encoded warnings about cosmic cycles and catastrophes, hoping future generations would decode their message before it was too late. We now stand at a unique moment in this cycle. We possess both the scientific understanding to comprehend these ancient warnings and the technological capability to potentially avert the disasters that claimed our predecessors. We can break the cycle if we choose. This recognition comes with responsibility. We are the inheritors of a legacy stretching back far beyond conventional history, a legacy preserved through unimaginable sacrifice by those who survived previous collapses and worked to ensure their knowledge wasn't entirely lost. Our obligation is twofold: to recover and integrate the wisdom of our ancestors while using our modern capabilities to protect Earth from the cosmic and planetary threats that have repeatedly reset civilization. By honoring the past, we may secure the future. Perhaps this is the ultimate purpose of the monuments and myths that have survived millennia, not merely to preserve knowledge, but to inspire hope. To remind us that humanity has faced extinction before and survived, that civilization has collapsed and been rebuilt. The thread of human knowledge has never completely broken, even through catastrophes that nearly erased us from Earth. That resilience may be our greatest inheritance, the determination to preserve wisdom for generations yet unborn, to ensure that what we've learned is not lost again. If you found this journey through our hidden history enlightening, subscribe to our channel for more explorations of humanity's forgotten past and uncertain future. Together, we'll continue deciphering the messages left by those who came before us, messages that may hold the key to our survival.